What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Average Fan Podcast. We are coming to you live, sort of, uh, after Hartford Athletics match with Orange County. It was a very interesting match, to say the least. Uh, but hope you will enjoy our coverage of that match, the Lou City match, and then looking ahead to Westchester. But Oliver, after a little bit of a break, how did it feel to be back in the stadium watching Hartford Athletic play?
Think one of the things that it's easy to forget in when you're watching soccer in Connecticut in like April is like just how great it is in the summer. It was 80 degrees. It was beautiful, glorious sunshine. It felt good to be alive. And that is not that is not how it feels when you're standing in the cold and you're standing in the rain in March and April. And you're thinking, why did I buy season tickets again? Why am I out here trying to cover this team? Um, and that feeling lasted for about 15 minutes of this game, and then it came back around at the end. We can talk about that in a moment. But I will say, like, also this is a 1 day break in the World Cup. Like we've had World Cup soccer for the last like God knows how many days consecutively, and there were no games today. And so it was kind of nice to actually get another get another soccer game in. Um, so that was I don't know, it was good.
Oliver, you mentioned the World Cup. I'll just mention it. You might see a Brazil hat in my background, but my wife has fallen in love with Norwegian soccer team. She's now Erling Haaland's biggest fan. She purchased a Norway jacket. She's all aboard. I guess Oliver, since we last talked, thoughts on the World Cup madness. Every single historical player, besides the greatest player of all time, without a doubt, Lionel Messi, besides him, all of the icons of, this generation have seemed to pass.
Yeah, Ronaldo going home, didn't
Loser.
wasn't really able to produce right in that game. Portugal leaves. There have been some incredible games. I will say England Mexico was not the best game of soccer I've ever seen, just in terms of like the technical product on the field. Right? No one was going to say, "Oh, these two teams played the beautiful game in the best way possible." But it might have been the best game of soccer in a knockout competition, just from the drama, just from the like there was I don't know what more you could have asked for from that game. Jude Bellingham scoring twice in like 90 seconds, player getting sent off. Like it was just in some ways it was like a that's what a perfect game of knockout soccer to me is. And I don't know how it's going to be topped. Given the way this World Cup was unfolded, I assume somebody is going to do something to top that between now and the final because there have been so many great moments on the pitch. But it was honestly one of the best knockout games I've ever seen, and certainly one of the best to be decided in regulation, right? To not require extra time, to not require penalties. The drama was incredible, and some of that was absolutely driven by the atmosphere. If that game had been played in Miami, it would not have been the same. It being played at the Azteca just added to it. But there have been so many really really good games, and I think seeing Messi, seeing Holland, seeing Harry Kane. Um, Seeing some of these guys really deliver on this stage has been incredible. Obviously, whatever your feelings about Cristiano Ronaldo the person are, he has been a great soccer player in his career, and to see that end, can be a little disappointing. Same with like Mo Salah, right? He's probably not going to be back, and there are other top level players like Manuel Neuer who are these guys are done, right? Like they're not coming back for another World Cup. Um, that feels like that always happens, but some of these guys have been around, Neuer, Ronaldo, they've been around for so long. Like I don't know that I really remember at this point in time before Ronaldo was playing soccer or Manuel Neuer. So it is a little bit bittersweet in some sense to see them end their careers over the last week or so, week or 10 days. Um, but also to see guys like Holland, who is probably going to be doing this for another couple of World Cup cycles, to see him playing at this level and looking like there might still be a ceiling for him in the international game is really incredible.
Yeah, Oliver, you touched on, just the theatrics of the Mexico England game. I have to ask, has anyone had a worse night in Mexico than Jordan Henderson?
I, I, I will say to play 0 minutes, get a yellow card, and then get a essentially a tournament-ending injury. Like that has to be some kind of record, right? Like I'm going to be at pub trivia in 15 years, and the question is going to be like, who's the only player in World Cup history to get a yellow card and an injury and not play? And it's going to be Jordan Henderson. Um, I'm sure somebody has had a worse night in Mexico City than that, but I probably not soccer related.
Very valid. And also too, I have to ask, has any British Prime Minister made any calls regarding overturning red cards?
Um, given that I don't know how closely you follow English politics,
Oh,
but given
I know
that
something going on. I'm aware.
yeah, given that Keir Starmer has announced his intention to resign, and we're going to have a leadership contest, I don't imagine that either he or Andy Burnham have made any calls to anybody about this.
And, it'd make him a little bit more likable, even though he's already decided to resign. And I think anyone kind of running, for candidacy, if like you can market yourself as someone who tried to get a red card overturned, I feel like in England you're gonna win. So, we'll if you see how that strategy worked out. Didn't work out for the United States. So, but back to Hartford Athletic. Unless you want to touch on the United States, Oliver, I laid it up for you. So
I will say, and maybe I want to come back to this maybe at the very end because I do think I don't think any of the off-field stuff played into the United States' favor in this one, right? It was just not um whatever your feelings on the red card, on the process that led to it being suspended so that, Balogun could play. It seemed very clear on the night that it had not done the United States any favor in their preparation, and that Belgium had kind of taken that personally a little bit, that all this nonsense was happening, and they played a game that I'm not sure anybody thought they were capable of playing based on their performances so far in this tournament. Um, so I think it was a pretty poor performance from the United States, and I certainly don't think they were done any favors by any of this stuff happening off.
definitely. But now we'll transfer over to Hartford Athletic and their match against Orange County. I guess just kind of starting off, Oliver, what was kind of your thoughts on the lineups that we saw, from Brendan Burke in this game?
Yeah, so they rotated pretty heavily. You saw guys like Andres Hernandez who have not played a ton of minutes. I think that was only his second start of the season. Maybe his third. He'd started in the U.S. Open Cup against FC Motown. That might have been the only other game he'd got the nod in the starting 11. Adel Taufik got his first start of the season, which I think he certainly earned. I don't want to diminish that in any way, based on his performances and how he's doing in training. Um, and Babakar Njai is a guy who's not been called on to give kind of heavy minutes so far, right? So there were a couple of guys in that starting lineup um, who have not been leaned on. And that was something that Brendan Burke kind of telegraphed a little bit last week ahead of the Lou City game was you have 3 games in 8 days, and the one that is the most important to us is the Cup game against Westchester on Saturday, and we're going to prepare with that in mind. So I wasn't terribly surprised by some of those decisions. I think Taufik starting, um, whether which game this week he started, I wasn't sure, but it seemed inevitable that he was going to start one of them between Saturday and Saturday. Um, you could maybe make the argument that Hartford over rotated a little bit in that. But I also think, Burke has been very clear that the USL Cup is a competition that he believes clubs in this league should prioritize. And he's, going to live by the sword and die by the sword on that one. They're going to roll their best 11 out there on Saturday night at home against Westchester. And if it costs them a point or 2 points tonight, so be it, because that's a competition he believes they can win again, and they want to make sure they advance. So I wasn't surprised. You could quibble with it a little bit. They were also hurt a little bit by, I think, the fact that you had guys like Sebastian Anderson, Samuel Cariaga, Matt Real, who were not available for selection. Whether Brendan Burke would have selected them or not tonight, they simply weren't available. So I think that may have played into this a little bit. The one or two or even three of those guys might have seen some minutes, and that might have affected the outcome. So I don't know. I wasn't surprised. a little bit disappointed by the performance some of those players put in. I think there are guys like Andres Hernandez who maybe didn't do themselves any favors with the way they played tonight in terms of getting minutes in the future. But also kind of an inevitability when you look at a long season and you think about what you're trying to prioritize and where Brendan Burke wants to focus. And this week the focus is on the cup.
Definitely, and I guess, I saw some chatter kind of about potentially them playing a different shape. I guess from your point of view, was it largely kind of the same formation that Brendan Burke's been rolling out, or, was there any kind of change there?
It wasn't a huge change. I mean, obviously against Blue City on Saturday, they rolled out that kind of four center back six formation, and today they were kind of back to what they've been doing. It was a little bit more of a traditional two up top to start with, but not really. I mean, it was not a huge change. I think that the what you see in a formation like this is they had guys like TJ Prestis out there who are not wing backs, right? And they're playing in those kind of like so it can look a little flatter. It can look a little less dynamic than it might be if it was Sebastian Anderson and Samadi out there when it's Njai and Prestis. They're not quite the same dynamic forces. But you had Fisher, you had Scarlett, on the back. You had Prestis out there. You had Njai. You had Galen Flynn playing on the wing as he's played the last couple of games in relief of Sebastian Anderson while he's been unavailable. I think the biggest thing to take away from that game, honestly, is that the midfield was really a bit of a black hole. Junior Morera and Andres Hernandez did not impress as a pairing, kind of in that midfield. And in the absence of Beverly Makangila, it felt a little soft. And in the absence of Barry Coffey and Samuel Farraga, it felt like it lacked fight going forward. So I don't necessarily know that it was a real big tactical shift from Brendan Burke, but definitely some of the selections are not they're not the top guys, and there were guys who were playing a little bit out of position, and that hurts as well.
Yeah, and obviously, I think maybe the start of the match can maybe be attributed partly due to kind of the rotation, but looking at the start, allowing a goal less than 10 minutes into the game and then having it followed up with a goal in the 17th minute, just why do you think maybe the team, came out flat, if you will, on allowing these 2 goals?
They looked a little bit unfocused and undisciplined rather than flat. I thought they actually came out with some good energy. They had a little bit the better of the opening exchanges. They weren't quite able to work a good look at goal early on, and then the first goal came because Orange County, switched the play, moved the ball across the pitch, and Hartford didn't follow them, and they got basically a free look at goal. It was very well done by Orange County. Like I don't want to take anything away from that, but it was a kind of defensive lapse that we've not really seen from Hartford in quite some time this season. I mean, you can really count on one hand, honestly, the number of times they've given away those kinds of looks, particularly a look in transition like this. So bit of a breakdown there. And they just seemed like they were a little bit unfocused. That the passes were not quite where they needed to be. They were a little bit late to every ball. Orange County looked like they had a little bit more energy. But they were there was an intent to what they were doing. It wasn't like they just didn't know what to do. They just didn't seem really in a place to execute. And then the second goal, I mean, it was a great individual effort by Scylla. Like he just drove through the defense and nobody challenged him. Nobody stepped out to him, and he just went at it and he shot. Like I mean, it was one of those things that like somebody has to take responsibility defensively, and I think that's kind of a place where they maybe missed Beverly Makangila. They missed someone who was willing to put his shoulder into somebody, even if it means giving away a free kick. You're not letting them kind of cut right to the edge of the box like that. So I think they just looked a little unfocused. It's understandable. Some of these are guys who maybe don't get a ton of minutes and are not super ready for the limelight, it appears. They overcommitted sometimes on tackles, and I think particularly in that the second goal, that Scylla goal, Andres Hernandez like got totally undressed. He went, he overcommitted, and Scylla had acres of space to go into, and maybe that's a mistake that Beverly McIntyre doesn't make, in that situation. So I do think just not having quite the right focus in the first 20 minutes or so, despite coming out with some positive intent and really getting some movement going forward. And then for a lot of that first half, it just felt like, well, this is kind of what Hartford is. They don't have it. They can't score. They can't manufacture a goal.
Yeah, and you kind of talked about Andreas Hernandez. Maybe we'll give him a little bit of a reprieve at the moment. But when you have guys like Taufik, Sadadanaku, and Flynn entering the 11, I guess did any kind of parts of their play stand out to you, whether it be positive or negative?
Yeah, I thought Abdullah Taufik looked like he is a guy who is going to be able to contribute. He needs minutes, and I think I know there was some conversation earlier this season about whether or not Hartford would send him out on a loan this summer so that he could simply get minutes, because that's what he needs. He was playing with Hartford reserves in UPSL, but that's gone now. That season is done, so there's not that opportunity for him to even get competitive minutes at that level. It appears that Hartford's going to retain him here with the championship side all season rather than send him out on loan. I would not be surprised to see him being given more and more minutes. This is sort of what we saw a couple of years ago with Mario Williams and Mamadou Dieng, was that ultimately Romario Williams lost out and Mamadou Dieng was given the opportunity. And if this team and Brendan Burke really believe that Abdullah Taufik is the next guy, I think Augie Williams is going to lose that battle as well, no matter what the contract he's in and no matter what his pedigree is, because they're going to look to the future. So I thought he looked fine. He didn't do anything incredible. He was running. He ran with purpose. He won the ball back a couple of times because he didn't give up on the play, and that's what you want to see. That was one of the qualities that Momo brought in his time here in Hartford, and you love to see that from a young player. Um, he did have a decent look at goal I think from a header or from a corner. Maybe could have directed it a little bit closer, but it was a good look. Um, but I think of those kind of players who've not played much this season, he was probably the one I thought who looked the best in that first half.
Then obviously we can get onto the good part now. Barry Coffey, what a performance! Potentially, probably, one of, if not his best performance so far, in a Hartford uniform. Um, just what did he bring into the game? Kind of, coming into the game. Just overall, was he able to make such an impact?
Well, he brought a sense of purpose, which Hartford was kind of lacking in midfield, right? There was not really that intentionality coming from the midfield. Um, but he also brought something, and if you've watched him play over the course of this season, when he's been on the pitch, one of the things that he does really, really well is he makes that late run. He is the guy who is crashing from midfield, so that when the first look isn't there, or there's a loose ball or a rebound, there's a guy at the top of the box to smack it home. And he did that. He did that against at Cosmos, I think it was in the cup. He did it twice tonight, essentially. The same sort of thing where he showed up late to smash the ball home from just outside the box. Um, and that's something that nobody else on this team has really taken responsibility to do consistently. And so when he's on the pitch, and I think, quite frankly, he's been used out on the wing sometimes by Brendan Burke, and I think he's better suited to being in the center, being playing kind of more like a second striker, not really a true 10. I don't necessarily know that his creativity is his strong suit. And I think something like he's maybe better in that kind of more advanced, playing off the nine. Um, but he he gives you that when the ball bounces around the box or when there's a deflection or the hold up, the play is held up and you need that person running off the ball. He brings that, and that's something that he did when he was playing in Ireland. A lot of his goals came from those kinds of positions where he was that additional player kind of crashing into the box. And he spoke after the game tonight. He said uh, Brendan Burke brought him here to do this. So this is why he was brought to Hartford. And so for him to do that, deliver on that was really meaningful because it repays the trust, right? It repays the trust that Brendan Burke and the coaching staff have had in Barry Coffey. So I think he brings something that this team really doesn't seem to have. Another player who is doing that. And it's why he's going to be in the starting 11 in every meaningful game this season, I think, because he does something that nobody else on the team seems able to do, which is to understand where he needs to be and when he needs to make that run and when he needs to crash the box and when he needs to be able to um, add to the attack in that way.
Yes, and it was also a special moment for Mingolina getting his 50th assist. So congratulations to Mishi. But we will continue our, time traveling and we'll go back to the Lou City match. Always love a nice 1-0 game. Everybody loves a scoring outburst. I guess just kind of initially, Oliver, what were kind of your takeaways from that match?
Well, Hartford brought back that kind of back four center backs, essentially a back six, two wing backs that they used really effectively against Tampa. And I guess you could look at this game two ways. On the one hand, you could say Mishin Galina missed a really good chance in the first half and then had her go off the crossbar at the death. They could have had a point. They could have had all three. Maybe you would have, if that had happened, you would have said it was well done. On the other hand, if Blue City had won 5-0, it would not have flattered the chances that they created in that game. It did not work as well as it did in the Tampa Bay game, is what I'll say. If you look at it, you say, well, 1-0, it's close. It didn't feel like it. Blue City was all over Hartford. They were not fooled. They did struggle a little bit in the first half to find good looks at goal. In the second half, they had absolutely had it solved. They were getting all sorts of good looks. The win was no more than they deserved. And I think Hartford maybe would, if and when they're playing Louisville again later in the season, they're going to need to figure out a different way to approach that game because what they did on Saturday just didn't really work.
I guess just kind of too, maybe taking that approach of, if you think about almost playing like say center backs, seems like you're just trying to maybe grind out a point, hopefully grind out maybe 3 points. Is that something that you've typically seen from Brendan Burke? And, do you think this is a style that can be successful and also be something that fans want to watch?
Well, can it be successful? Sure, right? You can park the bus, right? Like that's the reality of soccer, right? It is that if you are disciplined and you everyone knows their responsibility and executes, you can absolutely essentially play six at the back and you can bunker down and you can try to get something on a set piece and right, you can do that. Is it fun to watch? No, absolutely not. Like even if Hartford had won that game on Saturday, let's say Michi scores that early opportunity and Louisville isn't able to find that chance in the second half, it would not have been fun to watch. It would have been a great result, right? You take 3 points where you can get them, of course, but how much do you really, really want to watch your team get outshot like 26-4 or something like that? Like it's just not fun. And so while I can understand altering your tactics, altering your formation to get a result in a very specific situation, and particularly when you get to the playoffs, like you have to win each of those individual games, right? You have to win each matchup, you have to win each battle. It doesn't mean it's going to be a ton of fun to watch, and I don't necessarily think that is an indication that Hartford is where Brendan Burke wants them to be, right? I don't think he's looking at, hey, I signed an extension to 2029. I want to be going into games against teams like Tampa Bay and Lou City and like parking the bus and hoping we can grind something out. Like that might be where they are right now, and that's okay, right? This is 2026, so we've got a couple years ahead of us. But I just don't think that's what he wants to do. I don't think he really enjoys that. Now, he said on Friday before that game, hey, we're going to lean into what's working. Um, I don't know that it worked against Lou City, and I really think they need to figure out how to get more into the attacking third in those games because you just can't hope that you're going to get outshot like that in games against Tampa, in games against Louisville. They still got to play Charleston, right? They're going to play Pittsburgh again. I just don't think that is going to be successful, particularly when we get to the playoffs.
Yeah, and I'll kind of use this match just as a means to kind of ask you about Emmanuel Samadia. Just how do you feel he's performed this season? Obviously, very difficult, kind of with all the issues, visa issues and what have you, and just his late arrival. Um, Just how has he performed so far this season, and maybe how much of an impact have those kind of early struggles had?
Well, it's huge, right? This is a guy who didn't get into the country until the end of April, right? And that's not where you want to be. Um, I you know I, he he and I spoke last Friday ahead of the City game, and he talked a little bit about how difficult it has been. You arrived so late. You've been doing your best to stay in shape. You're doing your best to stay fit, but you're not getting the right um, the right training, right? You're not with the club, right? It's so difficult, right? When you're away from the team like that, and you don't know when you're going to get there, and you're in addition to all the things you're trying to do to keep your body right, you're also going through this off the field where you're going to embassies and you're trying to make this work so you can finally get into the country, and you arrive and you've got to get up to speed, right? You're not necessarily 100% match fit. You've not been with these players. There's new faces that you don't know that you have to gel with. You've got to figure out what's going on. It has been a really, really difficult season for him on an individual level. That said, he has incredible quality. And we saw that in the appearances he's made so far, and we saw it again tonight that he can deliver across better than probably anybody else on the team. And they couldn't quite find the back of the net tonight, but he created so many opportunities from set pieces and from open play, getting the ball into the box because he has that ability, and nobody else on the team really has that on a consistent basis. Sebastian Anderson will be the other player you would point to, but he also was unavailable tonight. He's a great contributor, but he is so far behind where he would want to be this season. You think about he's really been with the club for maybe 7 weeks at this point, something like that. Um, and 7 weeks, if he had got here when he was supposed to get here, would be March, right? Like this would be the beginning of the season, not July. So it's been tough. I know he's struggled with it. I know that he's excited to be here now, and he's excited to continue to play for Hartford and to commit his at least his short term future to Hartford. I know he has an ambition to play at a different level, and obviously every player wants to do that. But I know he has an ambition to potentially play in MLS in the future. But I know he's also excited to try and find more success with this club. And it has been so difficult for him on an individual level. But you can see, and you could see it tonight, what kind of a difference he can make when he is on the pitch because he is absolutely one of the elite fullbacks in this league. There's really like only a handful of players in the competition.
Yeah, and I guess, because we are time traveling, just when you have this result, tonight and then kind of looking at the Blue City match, does it give you any kind of, perspective change on, not being able to get the 3 points and what have you? I guess, is there any sort of kind of observations you can draw from the Blue City match, knowing what you know now?
Yeah, I think the Lucity match was really disappointing. I think they really wanted to get a result from that game. Burke said ahead of the game, it's tough to get a result at at that stadium. It's really hard. They would have been happy with a draw. I think they would absolutely have taken that. But to get nothing, to get 0 points was really disappointing. And I think it actually made this game a little bit of an awkward fixture, right? If you get a result against Blue City, then this midweek game, as you look ahead to this cup competition you prioritized, feels like a little bit of gravy, right? Like if we get a result against Orange County, they're top of the West, that'll be okay, right? Um, but it threw a little bit of a wrench into the works because I think they really would have liked to get 3 points out of this game, given what happened last Saturday. And but also, I think Bart stuck to his guns in terms of like let's prioritize the cup by not rolling out the strongest 11 that he could have in this game, and really said, "Hey, yep, that's a bummer. We would love to get more out of this game, but we have to stay focused on the weekend." So I do think it kind of upset what they were hoping for. If they'd come out of Lou City with a point and then they got a point tonight, that would maybe feel like a really good week. But it kind of feels like a week at the moment.
Definitely, and now we go to the future. to look at the USL Cup match against Westchester. Obviously, last year, Hartford played Westchester, recorded a 3-2 victory. I mean, Oliver, they should win this game, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, anything other than a win in regulation is a disappointment for Hartford. If you look at Westchester, they've scored, I think, 23 goals in League One, but 9 of those goals have come in 3 games. And in basically every other game, they just cannot find the back of the net. Um, they are not as bad as Cosmos, um, which is not saying much. Cosmos have been atrocious this season. They hung with RIFC in the cup a few weeks ago for a while, but ultimately RIFC put them away. Um, yeah, if Hartford doesn't take all 3 points from this game, it's that's a real shocker in my book.
Yeah, I mean, again, we'll just use this as an opportunity, this match. Is it time to bring Connor McGlynn back home? 8 goals for Westchester. Is this simply just, maybe League One is his level and he's able to rack up the goals there? Or, what are your thoughts on just McGlynn tearing it up?
Well, Connor McGlynn was a huge fan favorite at Hartford, and I don't think there's a Hartford Athletic supporter who doesn't want anything but good things for Connor McGlynn, except on Saturday. Now, if you ask Hartford fans, uh, the fact that Westchester has not one, but I think 2 former Hartford Athletic players, they also have Jonathan Jimenez. I mean, is it one of them like destined to score in this game? Because that feels like what always happens when former Hartford players come to Trinity Health Stadium if they find the back of the net somehow, some way. Um, Connor McGlynn is a player who for those people who weren't following the team when he signed ahead of the 2020 season out of an open tryout. That was a period of time where Hartford was relying on guys to come out of open tryouts and play, which is not the era that we're in anymore. Uh, but he signed out of an open tryout and he made over 100 appearances with the club. He's only one of only 2 players in club history to do that, the other being Danny Barrera. And he scored some great goals. Like that was one of the things that was obvious about him right away. I remember 2020. This was the COVID season. Um, he, uh, not a lot of fans allowed in the stadium. Watching a lot of these games on the road, he just had a cannon, absolute cannon for a leg. And that's been his calling card all along, is that he is not afraid to shoot, and he has the leg for it, and he has the accuracy to shoot from long range. The problem he had in Hartford, honestly, was that every manager he had seemed to want to convert him into a center back, and he wasn't quite fitting as a 6 or as an 8. And he didn't quite have some of the short range passing. He didn't quite have some of the things you maybe want from a player in that position. And so every manager was trying to make him a center back, and he ended up kind of positionless. And so I think going to League One has allowed him to develop a little bit more in the midfield, to play more as a 6 or an 8, because some of his shortcomings as a player are not as apparent in League One. I think he's a player that it's not surprising to me that he's succeeding because he's very committed. He always was very dedicated in Hartford. He was never afraid to put in a challenge. He was never afraid to put his boot through somebody. He was never afraid to shoot. He was never afraid to do what he needed to do. So it's great to see him succeeding. It's not surprising. Um, I don't know that he's even the ex-Hartford player that is probably the most dangerous in this game because I think Jonathan Jimenez is a better player than Nicole. He's also another player who's been kind of positionless. He can play basically any of the front 4 positions, but at the championship level, he wasn't really able to find quite the right role to really lock in and make one of those his own. And that can be a tough thing for a player when you can play a number of positions, but the manager isn't necessarily excited about giving you a start at any of them. And I think in the championship, in League One, what he's found is that that versatility is more of an asset than a drawback. And I do think, looking at Saturday, Jimenez is a player, he knows this team very well. He is not he is very dangerous because he is going to know inside and out what Hartford wants to do, both in attack and defense. And he's also a very talented attacking player. So McGlynn is a great story and a fan favorite and always will be. But Jimenez is the ex-Atlantic that I'd probably be more concerned about going into this game.
I mean, yeah, like you said, Jimenez is still having a good season. I believe he has 3 goals. Augie Williams not having a great season, so maybe we just do pull a swap right there. I don't think Augie Williams is going to League One, but just
Hey,
just maybe.
we sent Shane Beckford to Westchester last year, so maybe they'll take Augie Williams too. They got money. They'll clearly take on the salary.
I mean, yeah. So maybe they will. Maybe they will. That would be that would be an all time swap. But yes, it will be interesting to see. But I mean, Oliver, like you said, Brendan Burke is kind of really prioritizing the cup competition. And when I think of prioritizing the cup competition, I imagine he's going to roll out pretty much a starting 11 that you would see, full strength. When you have that type of lineup going into a game against, a lower league, um, is it acceptable to just like eke out a win, or is this a game that the Hartford should be winning by a few goals and really impressing themselves in the game?
Well, I think they want to build on what they showed in the last half hour tonight or last night, depending on when you're listening to this against Orange County. Um, what they showed, I mean, they were playing downhill against Orange County in the second half. Like the first half was a little bit more balanced, but by the second half, Orange County was just like hoping to get out on the counter if they could. They were struggling to get out of their own half. Hartford was putting crosses into the box. They had to defend so heroically, and I mean, and credit to them, right? Everybody on that team stepped up to preserve a point for Orange County because it really did look like Hartford was destined to win that game. But I think going into Saturday, they have to build on that. If we go back to 2025, at the beginning of the summer in late June, Hartford started to have these good performances against Loudon. They had 2 good showings in a week against RAFC, great performances against New Mexico, and those performances built on one another, right? They went from game to game and they added to that. And so looking at Saturday, what they have to do is they have to show up like they showed up in the last 20 or 30 minutes of the game against Orange County. If they do that, they're going to win this game easily. They're going to win like 3-0, 4-1, something like that. Because Westchester won't be able to hang with them if they play like that. If they revert to the way they've played in other games this season, against New Mexico recently, against, RIFC or Loudon at home, then this game is going to be one where if they get 3 points, it will not feel great. It just won't feel like a huge accomplishment. Because the reality is, if they win their group, they've got a little bit of time to figure this out before they play knockout games against other good teams. But they don't have a ton of time. So they need to start building towards that. Because if we get to August, when the next round of the USL Cup happens and Hartford is still struggling, it's not going to feel like, oh, this is a team that's ready to defend their title. So on Saturday, they have to do the things that they did against Orange County. And that means that players like Barry Coffey, Nishin Galina played a better half hour tonight than he might have played this season. He has not been good this season, but tonight it felt like it was very close to really unlocking for him. He had an assist, really good, really important, but he was beating his man, and not just beating his man, but then finding the ball into the box. And it just felt like it was so close to really unlocking. And you want to see that go forward on Saturday. You want to see Barry Coffey build on this performance and continue to get goals, to be that guy who scored like 26 goals in a season in the second tier of the League of Ireland. You want to see Emmanuel Samadia participate in that. You want to see Sebastian Anderson hopefully back in the lineup very soon. You want to see Augie Williams get it going, or Abdullah Taufik be given more minutes and see him unlock. So I think on Saturday, if they just eke out a win, it's not going to feel like enough. They really need to harness the energy from tonight, from that comeback, and take that forward into the weekend.
Yes, and speaking of former Hartford players, we're going to give you some breaking live news that you're probably going to listen to hours after this happened. But Oliver Kyle Edwards scoring against RAFC. Very weird to see it sunny out when it's 11 p.m. here, but obviously time zones exist. But Kyle Edwards doing his former team a favor.
Uh, Kyle, did he come off the bench to score that goal?
No, no, this is an 18th minute, so unless he makes
Also, he subbed.
very early sub,
Yeah, Kyle Edwards is an interesting player because he never really seemed to have it as a starter when he was in Hartford. He was obviously a super hub, but since going to Sacramento, he feels like he has maybe found a little bit more of that rhythm early in the game. And I mean, it's great to see him succeed. He toiled away on a really bad team here in 2023, and nearly got sent out. I think to Monterey Bay in 2024 before becoming a really critical part of their team in 2025 and really earned whatever Sacramento is giving him and that opportunity there to play for a really great club. So great to see him succeeding. But also he is really climbing up that list of all-time goals off the bench in the league. So definitely for folks, keep an eye on that one. He doesn't need too many more to be challenging. I think Lucky Fasana of Tampa Bay and a couple other clubs is the all-time leader for substitute goals in the championship, and Kyle Edwards is not that far off the pace.
I have a terrible update. Again, live breaking news that you listen to afterwards. Hugo Baccarat tied it up for Rhode Island FC. So,
Well, that's about to be expected. So, USL After Dark in full effect out there in Sacramento at
oh,
Hart
it's
Health
not
Park.
after dark. It's not after dark. It's sunlight. It's bright out.
Well, it's after dark for me here in Connecticut.
So USL After Dark is kind of
It's a
centered.
state of mind, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, we have an East Coast bias here at the average fan. So,
exactly, exactly. But Oliver, I know you did mention potentially getting back to the World Cup in the U.S. men's national team. I will say random USLW check-in. Vermont Green is playing in the semifinals of the USLW. I think it's pretty impressive considering Hartford's overall performance, especially in that first game, that you know, you essentially had a really good performance against semifinals and potential champions. So just want to, give again another shout out to Hartford Athletics W League team. But Oliver, yeah, thoughts on any other additional thoughts that you had on the World Cup and the U.S. men's national team and maybe political leaders vying for red cards get overturned?
yeah, I think if you're a casual soccer fan and you don't pay a lot of attention to FIFA, um, this can feel weird. You're like, is this real? That the president can call and they'll look into this, red card and suspend the red card. And the reality is this is how FIFA operates. Like if there is a more corrupt organization in the world than FIFA, I don't know what it is. And that doesn't necessarily, and we tend to think of corruption in terms of like payoffs, right? That someone shows up with a bag of cash and then you do something for them because they gave you a bag of cash. And sure, like that's some of what's going on with FIFA. But it's just this level of doing favors for powerful people that is totally antithetical to the game and to what it allegedly is about. Um, I think I mean this World Cup has in some ways summed up everything that is great about soccer. We look at Cape Cape Verde against Argentina, which was an incredible game, an incredible advertisement for what this can be. England, Mexico at the Azteca. I don't know how you will top that for a knockout game outside of like, you know, Brazil playing at the Maracanã or something like that, right? In a similar atmosphere. Um, those are the good things. The bad things are everything that FIFA does. The bad things are everything that Donald Trump has tried to do, inserting himself into this um, and turning it to shit, right? Um, but if you don't pay attention to FIFA and you don't pay attention to soccer as an entity outside of maybe watching some games and you're not thinking about that level, this is just what they do. This is the kind of bullshit that they do, and they do it all the time. And they do it, this is how we end up with a World Cup in a country, not this country, but in a country that where thousands of people died uh, building World Cup stadiums because that's what FIFA does. This is what FIFA does, and it's why so many people who pay attention to soccer were so skeptical of this World Cup. And I'm so glad that the fans and the players have done so much to prove our worst fears wrong about this tournament. The concerns we had that there would be empty stadiums, the concerns we had that the vibe would be terrible, and all of these things. The fans and the players have shown up, and they always do, but they've done that in the teeth of this just incredible level of corruption from FIFA that is just it's unconscionable at this point. It's absolutely unconscionable. Um, and I don't know that I can emphasize enough to people who are listening. If you are not like a dedicated fan of the sport, this is the way it is, but it has to be otherwise in the future. It cannot remain this
Yes, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, Brazil. I believe, the story goes that they like paid off a ref to not show up at a kind of hearing regarding a red card, I believe, for Rivaldo, or no, it's for definitely a major player. So like this definitely is FIFA's kind of MO, and I mean, it's bad when Sepp Blatter's tweeting about how corrupt you are.
We thought we couldn't do any worse than Sepp Blatter, and yet here we are with Gianni Infantino showing us how wrong we were.
It's just like the Simpsons meme. This is your worst day yet, not your worst day ever.
It's the monkey's paw curling. We were like, oh god, anything to get rid of Sepp Blatter. Here
Exactly.
comes Gianni Infantino.
Exactly. But yeah, plenty of kind of great soccer left. Um, got France, Morocco coming up. Oliver, is it coming home?
Absolutely. After that game, after beating Mexico at the Azteca with 10 men, it's coming home.
Well, it's gonna be really disappointing when France wins it all for you, Oliver. I'm so sorry.
I will say, I mean, like if I'm being honest, France is far and away the favorite. Like there's no question, right? They have like the three best players in the world. So who else can it really be? Um, and they've looked great. They haven't done anything so far that has led me like there. Sometimes you watch teams play in the World Cup and you're like, well, they look good, but like there's a flaw there. I don't see the flaw with France. Maybe Morocco will find it. Maybe Spain or Belgium will find it in the semifinal, but they're very, 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 very good. And as much as I will always be England for me. It is impossible not to acknowledge how good France.
Definitely. And Oliver, you know what time it is. It's time for the final word.
Well, I we don't have a lot of episodes left where we're going to be able to talk about the World Cup. I it's it feels like it's lasting forever, but it won't. It'll be over soon enough. And I just want to say this World Cup, and I don't remember the 1994 World Cup in the same way. I was 10, and I didn't have the same perspective on it. But this World Cup has not felt to me like any of the previous World Cups. Not like Russia, not like South Africa, not like Japan, South Korea. And I mentioned a moment ago like the good and the bad, right? And the bad has been FIFA's greed and FIFA's corruption, and the way that the federal government in the United States has tried to insert itself and has denied referees entry to the country, has denied players entry to the country, has forced the Iranian national team to leave on a plane immediately after their games. All of that has been bad. But what has been so great here has been to see how communities in this country have embraced every single team. And some of that, of course, is like, yeah, there are more Cape Verdeans in between, Hartford and Boston than there are possibly in Cape Verde at this point, right? That's, of course, that's amazing. But it's not just that, right? It's the Algerian team being embraced in Lawrence, Kansas, right? It's Scotland being so embraced in Boston that they donated $15,000 to a charity because related to school transportation buses, right? Because they were using school buses to get to the games, right? Like there has been this level of embrace of these teams that I don't know that we've seen at any previous or recent World Cup. And some of that to me is what is so good about this tournament and so good about this country particularly is that I just do not believe you would see this anywhere else in the world. And if what we've seen from our government of late has been so much of what is bad about this country, this World Cup has also shown us so much of what